Thank you. So we have one last part to the panel, which is with Dr. David Dow. David Dow is the co-founder of GainForest. Thank you. So we have one last part to the panel, which is with Dr. David Dow. David Dow is the co-founder of GainForest, which is a decentralized science non-profit which uses emerging technologies to address the climate and biodiversity crisis. That's all very technical, but we will break it down because I definitely don't understand it. So please welcome Dr. David Dow. Thank you for coming, David. I'm sure you heard the last session, so
yes.
We can draw on that if we need to. So, David, I'm excited to talk to you today because what you're doing at GainForest seems to be quite radical, actually, but it's very hard to understand. So let's break it down. If you had to kind of write an easy tagline for what GainForest means, what would you say in one line?
Okay, that's a difficult one, but we describe ourselves as a decentralized science nonprofit that empowers and supports local communities, indigenous scientists, to hopefully win the next Nobel Prize.
Okay, good effort. So what is the problem? We're going to start with the problem and move to the solution. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve with GainForest?
So look, my background is actually not very nature risk. I started as an AI researcher doing my PhD on algorithms with the aim and the hope to create these tech solutions that we're talking about all the time to monitor nature, biodiversity, to support the systems, the financial systems needed to provide change. But then when I looked at the data, my gosh, does anyone know? So in science, we have a global database, one place where all the biodiversity data in the world is collected, ever. Every data point from Alexander from Humboldt's first trip in South America to now. Do you know how much of that data is from North America and Europe? From that database?
Any guesses? I mean, I can't hear you if you shout, but you could give me some hands. 50%?
50%?
50%?
Higher than 50%? 70%?
80%?
It's
90%. Okay.
It's not 90, it's 86.3% of the world's biodiversity and nature data is in the global north. And believe it or not, the Amazon rainforest, the most biodiverse place in the world, has only 0.05% of data. So when I looked at this from an AI research, just from a scientific perspective, you put garbage data into the algorithm, and you get garbage results out.
Wow.
Right? And also it speaks of what Paul just said about the disconnect with us and nature. Because if you look at the data set, it looks not like the data set of biodiversity, it looks like the data set of global GDP. And that tells everything. It's like we feel all the disconnect of nature, but if you see it from the data, it becomes very clear.
Absolutely. So all of the data that we've got, or 86% of it on nature in the whole world, is basically 86% based on Europe and North America.
Yeah.
That's pretty outrageous since we have the Amazon, we have the Congo Basin, both two of the most biodiverse places in the world. They don't have much data collected on them. So now tell us what the solution is. What is your tech product trying to solve?
Look, initially we thought the solution is, okay, we go and collect more data. We build some top-down solution. Maybe we employ satellite data. Maybe we kind of build a tech company in Silicon Valley and go down and collect with robots. But no, the solution is much more obvious. The solution is to talk to the nature stewards and support them in becoming indigenous scientists, right? Indigenous data scientists that are able to collect this data and able to record and provide economic resilience and opportunity, right? Because I believe talent is equally distributed around the world, but opportunity is not. And instead of looking at the data gap as a challenge, we saw it as an economic opportunity. And what we do is very simple. We pay 1 cent per bioacoustic recording, 1 minute of the sound of the rainforest, and we pay 5 cents per drone image data in megabytes. And that's how we do it.
Wow. So communities on the ground, indigenous communities, I imagine mostly, is that who you work with mostly, indigenous people in communities in the global south? And so you give them the opportunity to record the nature data in their local area, and you pay them to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So how does that work in terms of going into these communities and equipping them with that technology? How do they receive that? Do they see that as, oh, big tech coming in trying to, techify our rainforest, or do they embrace it?
So I brought one of the sensors with me. So this thing is what we call a bioacoustic sensor. So we talked a lot about bioacoustic, but I really wanted to also show you what that data is, right? And you understand why it's so important for the communities to collect it and not us. So maybe I brought a sound from the Amazon in Manaus. I brought it here. If maybe the tech team can support me and play this small sound. And you will hear an animal. And if any one of you know what animal that is, please stretch your hand. Do you hear that hauling in the back? Maybe it's a little bit difficult. Oh, I see some people know that animal. I'm looking at some of the volunteers who wanted to play around and guess too. It's scary, that hauling.
Do you want to shout out what you think it is? Can you hear?
I think we can stop the sound. It's a monkey, yeah. Yeah.
It's a monkey?
It's.
Oh, you thought it was a cricket. She thought it was a cricket.
So this kind of hauling sound. When I first heard it in the Amazon, because I was with Marina Mura from the Mura tribe, and we just took one of these sensors out. We were collecting them and deploying them in the forest. I was scared to death because I thought it's some kind of jaguar that's coming to eat me, but no, it's a small howler monkey. A monkey that has a really big mouth and crawls. And she was laughing at me when I was scared, because she's like, David, this is just a little monkey. That tells you so much about that knowledge that the communities have. They hear it, they know it, because this is their backyard, right? And so this data is super important for them to collect and empower. And I want to play another sound. So you just heard a sound from the Amazon rainforest, deeply, really biodiverse, as we expect. But this sound is just next door. And listen to the difference. Notice how there's no howler monkey. It's also a forest, but you don't hear any birds. You don't hear any crickets. This is just wind, and you hear this frog. Okay, thank you so much, tech team. What do you think? Why do you not hear life, even though this is a forest? What do you think? What kind of forest is that? Yes.
I don't think this is set up for Q&A. We're probably on the wrong stage.
But I'm sure you have the right hinge.
We'll talk to you afterwards. It seems like you have some really good guesses. Maybe you should have a conversation afterwards. So tell us.
This is a monoculture, a timber farm planted for carbon credits.
Monoculture timber farm.
This is a carbon credit. This project has received carbon credits from companies here, and you can hear the difference of a healthy nature and a monoculture. That this is a eucalyptus farm. Eucalyptus is the fastest growing tree in the world. Yeah. It grows in full size in 10 years. You use it to cut and do it for timber, but the leaves from the eucalyptus is toxic, such that there's no life, no biodiversity that you can hear.
Wow.
And I think that data, that's why it's so important to collect that data, to make informed decisions. And the fact that we don't have any data from these rainforests in the world is a shame.
Wow. So you said that there are going to be companies in this room today who have maybe bought carbon offsets in that forest that you just played from, which has presumably been stripped from a lot of its biodiversity, and it's become very monoculture planting. Yeah. Tell us a bit about carbon offsetting, because a lot of companies here, that will be a big part of their approach to reducing their carbon footprint. But I think what you want to do is you want to create an alternative for the carbon market. Yes. with this, what you call conservation data market.
Yes.
What do you think is wrong with the current carbon offset market, and what are you going to do differently?
Look, so I had high hopes so my background is in math and physics, and I studied computer science. But when I looked at the carbon market, I have never seen anything more complicated than this. And the fact is, simply, if you dig into the math of how a carbon credit is calculated, you have something like an allometric equation. You estimate that a tree is a cylinder with a wood density, and that is like your first carbon credit, and you times it the number of trees you measure. Since when is a tree a cylinder? Like if you go to the mangroves in Southeast Asia, this is not a cylinder. So you already have fundamentally, when you do the science in the first layer, you have error, uncertainty, and then it will be only emphasized and accelerated by the lack of data that we see right now. So I think at its essence, what a carbon credit is in the voluntary market is a very beautifully wrapped data point. A data point that is collected on the ground and wrapped with methodologies, wrapped with reputation system, wrapped with certification, but it is a data point nonetheless. And so why don't we just pay the community straight for the data point instead of having them pay? Do you know how much it costs to set up a carbon credit project up front? Like, first of all, you need to have a large size to do so. No grassroots community can set up a carbon credit project by its own. You need to invest $500,000 just to do the paperwork for going to Vera and Gold Standard to do these carbon credits, right? So what we are thinking is, we're lacking data already. We don't have data. Data is really important, as we all know that who are the companies in the world that right now earn the most money? It's not nature-based companies. It is Google, Facebook, Amazon, and they all run on data, right? So why can't we have the same business model for nature? So we're asking ourselves, we pay for the data collection. We make the threshold for communities to participate in data collections as low as possible, basically paying them a little bit of like a couple of cents upfront to get started. And then as they're collecting more and more data on their impact area, they also learn how to collect data. They get more capable in data management, and they become upskilling them, and they become super resilient.
And so if you're an indigenous person or indigenous community, or you live very rurally, and you get involved with what you're doing at GainForest, and you start collecting data and you get paid for it, is that an amount of money that you would be able to live on, or is it just a few cents here and there?
Look, we sometimes forget what a few cents mean in these communities, right? Like a couple of cents don't make a difference in the country I'm based in Switzerland. You wouldn't even move your little pinky finger for a cent. But in Manaus, in the Amazon, $500 per month is all a family has with mom, dad, kids, grandma, grandpa. $500 a month. Yeah. Right? And that is literally nothing for us. This is how much we pay per Uber every month here in Paris. So these couple of cents, they might not make it fully, but they are a big incentive. And then what is beautiful about this data-driven funding pipeline, what we see is once people start collecting the first data points, they have enough money to, for example, buy a Starlink, get connected, this is $40 a month, and then they collect more and more data. And what we see is then that companies that care about impact reporting look at these projects and say, wow, this project has a lot of data now. So I want to look into it and I want to invest. And then we have many communities. So we work with 35 communities around the world.
35?
Yeah, 35. In the southern Philippines, in East Africa, and in the Amazon. From those 35, everyone is receiving conservation data income. That's what we call these kind of couple cents. And then 10 of them are now receiving additional funding from companies around the world that discovered them because of the data collection. And 2 of them have raised more money than our NGO because they got contracts with governments, with universities, because they are local indigenous data scientists. So their expertise is valued.
So as well as companies investing in these projects, you also give them kind of a lever for universities and for governments to also invest, to use that data for their own gain.
Yes.
Right. And something I'm really interested about GainForest in is that it seems to be kind of greenwash proof in the sense that you use blockchain. Now, I don't know how many people know about blockchain. I know a bit about it. It's very complicated. But essentially, from what I understand, the way you use it is it's this decentralized system that's a bit like a spreadsheet, so that all of the money being put into this community is tracked, and traceable. So it means that you can't cheat because everyone can see and everyone would be able to, call you out if you were taking advantage or if you were not paying enough. So why is that such an integral part of what you do?
Look, it actually goes far beyond that. Like the simple act of transacting money from A to B, from Paris to Brazil. But the first time I wanted to send money to Brazil from Switzerland, $10. My Swiss bank called me 3 times, asking David, what the heck is going on? Is this like some money laundering? And then I had to pay more transaction fee and wait 2 weeks until they received $10. How do you make conservation data income, these cents donations, with the current existing financial system? Well, blockchain actually is really beautiful. Just a simple act of transaction, banking the unbanked, because many of the communities around the world, they don't have even a bank account, right? But if you receive cryptocurrency, all you need, and actually cryptocurrency is highly adopted in South America because of this unstable currency that they are facing. So they're using something called stablecoins that is pegged to the US dollar, and all they need is just download an app, and they can receive instant these tiny cents of donations. And these are all traced and tracked and connected to the data points they collect. And in that way, the system is super transparent.
It's so interesting because we were just speaking to Wiesa on the last panel, who lives in the Lota ecosystem in Sumatra, and she was saying that it's sometimes difficult to think about nature and tech in the same way because it seems like those two things are a paradox. And it's the same here with, you would never think, that an indigenous tribe in the Amazon would be using cryptocurrency to be getting paid, but apparently that's what's happening, and they're really embracing it. Is that right?
Also, I want to emphasize that nature and technology is nature. If you look at, so I'm speaking of it as a technologist, but if you look at what technology is built of, it's built of the material of nature, silicon, electricity. These are all natural phenomena. How can we believe that technology and nature are separate? This is the whole problem we are looking at right now. The fact that we're disconnected from nature, and the fact that we also think, oh, it's cool for an indigenous community to do so.
Yeah.
No, they are the owners of original ancestral technology, right? And so we need to, first of all, need to change that mindset of that these are two separate things and it's like wondrous. No, these are actually perfectly supportive. If you look actually at the most promising people around the world when it comes to tech, I hate the term global south. I think it's a term that was imposed from somewhere top down because it has this poverty feeling on it. I use the term global majority because these countries have the youngest people in the world, the most tech curious people. You give them a drone, you don't have to tell them anything, they know how to fly the drone, like they ace it. I crash my drone more often than the indigenous people fly their drones. So
yeah, I would definitely crash the drone.
Yeah, so honestly, like this is together.
Okay, that's an amazing answer. So we've got to finish. So just the last question for you is, we've got an audience here. If they're interested by the idea of GainForest, and obviously the carbon market has been mired in a bit of scandal over the last few years. So this is a completely alternative model. What would you say to someone sitting in the audience who's interested in kind of getting involved? What can they do?
Look, if you're looking for an alternative for carbon credits, you should fund data collection because you're going to be the first person in the world who creates a data set in this area. You're going to be scientifically famous. So I think this is more bragging rights than like, okay, I saved this nature. So think about this. Scientifically, it makes totally sense to collect this data set. Also, for your business, it makes sense to justify your actions with data. So if you want to support, talk to us, of course. My team and I are here today at the stage. And I think this is something that you all should consider.
David. Thank you so much. And the sun has come out just as we're finishing. So thank you, sun.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.